No, these were airplanes that actually belong to private owners. I bought them between 2018 and 2020, and then 5 of them were in Accra. They were parked at Kotoka International Airport, and then got the permits, and then we took them apart with engineers, put them on trucks, police escorts, and drove them all the way to Tamale and reassembled them here.
You mean you bought old planes?
Yes.
And came to dump them on your compound? Why?
They're important because, you know, I've used a lot of drone technology in my work over the years in documenting the projects that I did, or even trying to understand the technology or what it means for us, like in our generation and a generation that is yet to emerge. And I thought it was actually very interesting, like looking at that in relation to these old technological forms. And when airplanes are old, they take them to these graveyards and then they scrap them, you know. So I thought that it would actually be quite interesting to bring these airplanes here and use them to make classrooms, because we take out the seats in them. I myself, I'm interested in building a cinema. So we use the seats to build a cinema, which we're still working on. But when the inside of the airplane becomes a void, almost like a cargo plane, it becomes an empty space which things can fill. So by just simply putting a TV screen in there and then playing YouTube videos on like technology and things like that, when school people come here, or for instance the kids in the community, who a lot of them would have never even seen an airplane before, to talk about even touching one or using one as a classroom, once they occupy that space, conversations that you talk about will not be the same conversations that you talk about when you're sitting in an ordinary classroom block. So for me, I was very much interested in the imaginations that could be sprawled through that, and I just gave it a shot to see.
So children in the Tamale Nanton community actually come for what? Is it lessons? Is it lectures? Is it coding? What do they do?
All kinds of things. We're starting these coding classes, which a very good friend of mine, Alpha, had given us these old iMac computers, and we also bought some computers which we're using to teach children how to code, photography, things like that. We also have drones, which we would teach children what drones are, what they mean in relation to older technological forms, in relation to astronomical terms, like looking at it in relation to the universe, things like that. And some of the airplanes are also interesting with regards to the histories they come with. Like one of the ones that I have, the Antonov, the old airplane, it was made in Poland in 1987, and it was modeled after the Second World War engines. They were actually made with tin and fiber.
Wow.
So it's like cloth and tin, just ideal milk tin, that kind of material in making this airplane. And the history about these airplanes is that after the Second World War, they had used so much of tin to produce these airplanes that there was a shortage of tin in the world. So they had to melt a lot of these war vessels in order to produce ordinary household objects. So you see the transformation of the material. So this was one of the few ones that was left. A guy had brought it, this Swiss guy had brought it from he had bought it from Miami, really expensive, like $150-something thousand, taking it to Europe, converted it into a private plane, flew it all the way to Ghana, but the civil aviation wouldn't give him permits because they said, this rickety plane, you can't fly it in our airspace. So he had a temporal permit to fly it for 6 months. And afterwards, for years, for over a decade, it was parked at Kotoka, rusting away. So when I met him and I told him that, I'm interested in these histories and interested in what this object symbolizes, and that children can learn more from it. Even sometimes when kids come here and we go there and we're talking about, let's say, because it was made back then in the former USSR. So when we're even talking about a lot of them, they wouldn't know what these things are. So even the idea of the airplane allows us to be able to teleport into specific moments in time that we can relook at history